Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. Over the last couple of weeks on the show, you guys have seen we've had a lot of matches building people up to these high positions, right? We had the title match. We've had a number one contenders match. We've had matches leading to the next number one contenders match. But in the mix of all these top players trying to vie for that number one position in the league, we have other players who unfortunately took some losses early on and haven't been able to get back into the ring yet. And they are here tonight looking for that first win. Tonight's matchup is between Shannon Briggs and JD Domash, two guys who are currently 0-2, a tough 0-2 for two very different reasons from both of these competitors who are looking to come in tonight and get their first victory. So let's go ahead and get it going. Introducing the first competitor tonight with a record of 0 wins, 2 defeats. He is JD Domash. JD, welcome back to the Battleground, sir. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good, good. So, JD, a lot of people may not know this because enough time has passed that it really didn't make a difference. But after your last match, we had a discussion, and you actually were taken off the roster for Battleground. You felt after being knocked out by Matt that it just maybe this wasn't for you, maybe it wasn't something you wanted to continue doing, and you were taken off the roster. Enough time passed. You signed up to play in that 2021 exhibition match at the end of last year after a decent-sized layoff. And though you didn't win that match, it seemed like you felt much better about your performance, and you asked to be put back on the roster to get a match. Again, it took us a bit to get there, but we do have that match now. So I guess just after the kind of, we'll call it a pseudo-emotional journey, because let's be real, I don't expect anyone to go on a real emotional journey with this league except for myself. How are you feeling getting back into this after a layover?
I mean, it definitely was. Those two losses were really tough. But then, I kind of realized what my true value to the movie Battleground was. That is as a patsy. I want to be movie Battleground's greatest patsy. So far, Matt Beard and Tyler Birch ended up in title contention. Let's keep that streak going. Let's see who else I can put over. Not going to make it easy for Shannon Briggs tonight, but you know, let's let me. I want to be movie Battleground's greatest patsy.
Well, it's certainly an angle, and it's one that I can respect you for. If it helps, your only competition might be Jake Reese, and he's doing that completely unintentionally. So let's see how it turns out for you tonight. Best of luck losing, I guess. I don't really know how that one works, but I'm going to go ahead and set you to the back for now, as we will bring in your opponent, also with a record of 0 wins, 2 defeats. He is Shannon Briggs. Shannon, welcome back, sir. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's been a while, but
It
uh, uh, but yeah, I look forward to going back into the movie background arena, and very interesting remarks from JD. I will definitely I will definitely on my part will make it a worthy match. So we'll see.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, like statistically, as somebody who sees whether it's through being here or through editing every single one of these matches, you have to be one of the hardest 0-2 players I've ever seen. You were the first competitor to get taken to the blind round twice. And unfortunately, neither of those did go your way. But even the best of players have lost in that round. So the fact that you had to do it twice before anybody else in both of your only matches, obviously you previously had the playoff for that extra spot in the tournament, which was a one question playoff that you did lose to Austin. For anyone who didn't know behind the scenes, eventually when the other person that Austin was supposed to play dropped out of that match, because God, that match went smoothly, didn't it? Shannon was offered the slot to play a full match against Austin, but unfortunately, because of availability at the time, it was a little difficult to try and make work under a time crunch, which is how Henry ended up with that slot, because he was the next person in line due to behind the scenes issues to be given a potential second chance. We saw what he did with that. But now you do have another chance to come back into this and get that win. So just kind of, where's your head at going into this?
Well, for each of my matches, I feel like I've tried to improve my research and more of my of all the weaknesses and the stuff I was needed help on with the previous ones, and so I'm trying to hopefully this one I finally hope I've kind of reached my full potential as far as like what I can show for the movie background. So uh, it'll be interesting.
Absolutely, man. Well, I wish you the best of luck. I'm going to go ahead and bring in JD and let us go ahead and get into this. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is a first to 3 points will win the match. Each question is worth 1 point. If one of our competitors happens to get 3 questions correct in a row, it will be a victory by knockout. If it is a 2-2 tie at the end, we will be going to the blind round. Shannon, you do have some experience there. But that said, the first 4 rounds is what we're going to worry about first. In the regulation debate rounds, the questions were sent to the competitors ahead of time. They have had a chance to get them ready. There was a 60-second opening argument, a 2-minute solo pitch, a 4-minute open discussion segment where they'll go back and forth and try and get in as many points as they possibly can, and 60 seconds of closing time, at which point it will be turned over to our judges. In the back, we do have Alejandro, Andrea, and Henry with us tonight. They will be making the decisions behind the scenes based off of what was said in the argument. But with all that out of the way, guys, are we ready to go?
Ready.
All right, let's get into it. And we're going to start off tonight's debate with nothing other than a plug, because this question is a viewer-submitted question. That's a thing that we've been doing over the last series of matches. If you are a competitor or a judge or just a viewer watching, and you guys want to see a question that you have a question that you want to see debated by the competitors, email me at officialaaronknoll@gmail.com. It's also there in the banner that is scrolling across now if you want to go back, pause the video, take a picture, whatever you like. But email officialaaronknoll@gmail.com. Please include your name on the question, because if I don't know who sent it to me, I'm not using it, because that means there is a statistical chance that you could get your own question, and that's just not fair, is it? So put your name on there, submit it, and let's get to that question, which was submitted today by competitor Will Cohen for debate. And the question is, what is the best R-rated comedy of all time? Many would consider R-rated comedies to be the best comedies. Maybe in some cases, the only good comedies. I don't know, doing PG-13 and being dirty is a little difficult. But the question is on the table, what is the best one of all time? And if anything is going to be decided upon today, it's that these two gentlemen have come to a consensus on which decade held the best R-rated comedies. I would say that, to say the least. But let's see which one is better. We're going to go ahead and get into it. Shannon, because you have been to the blind round more than once, statistically, that is just enough to give you the slight edge over JD, so you will be deemed the favorite tonight. You chose to go first on questions 1 and 3. So as I pull in the timer for you, it will start ticking once you begin speaking. Best of luck, guys.
Okay. Well, there are many great R-rated comedies from the last 50 years to choose from. My choice is a film that will probably surprise you to know that it is R-rated. This film doesn't have graphic nudity or gross-out body humor. What it does have is 2 old-time great comedic performances by Steve Martin and John Candy, written and directed by John Hughes. This is the gold standard for the road trip comedy that expertly uses its R rating to produce one of the funniest scenes ever. My choice is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I will see my rest of my time.
All right, so answer number 1 on the board, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. JD, you are up, sir. Time starts when you begin speaking.
I think the best rated R comedies of all time have a simple premise where all the hijinks come as a direct result of the main characters. The leads have instant chemistry, and the film utilizes its R rating, and it has unforgettable moments. No rated R comedy does this better than The Blues Brothers. John Landis' execution of this vision had to be pitch perfect, which I'll get into in a moment. And oh boy, it has some all-time great moments. You got a car chase that wrecks a suburban mall, a psychotic Carrie Fisher chasing the Blues Brothers all across Illinois. Not to mention a 30-minute climax that destroys parts of downtown Chicago. The Blues Brothers has more moments than I can possibly name. It's a comedic, R-rated masterpiece. I cede the rest of my time.
All right, so the battle is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles versus the Blues Brothers. We're going to go back over to Shannon with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Sir, you'll have 2 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Like a lot of great movies, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles had a kind of a difficult production. It was kind of hustled through the studio to make a holiday release, and John Hughes had to rewrite the screenplay during production several times, and subplots were taken out. However, because of that, he was able to condense the fat of it and to leave just all the great comedic moments of the film and focus on the main relationship between the two people. And it is a breezy 90 minutes, and nothing of the hurry production is shown. I think it's maybe John Hughes' best directed film. But it earns his R rating when Steve Martin's character Neil, ever spent a hellish night with John Kennedy's Dell. He's screwed over by so many things, but he's screwed over by a car rental company and lays into the car rental agent a hilarious tirade that has Martin saying the word fucking 18 times. And it ends with Martin saying that he threw away the rental agreement. And the rental agent delivers the punchline, well, you're fucked. While the Blues Brothers can have, the fucks taken out of it, and it can still be a hard PG, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles has to have that scene unedited, because at that point in film, it has earned those F-bombs. I feel like I said, that the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was being with this John Hughes having to kind of cut subplots or whatever. It keeps it tight, breezy pace where nothing's like slowed down or whatever. Whereas like Blues Brothers, I feel it was already kind of bloated after like over 2 hours, and that doesn't include the extended cut that most people are is available now. That's almost 2.5 hours, and it's the most readily available version. But I feel like that also the fact that the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles has become like a Thanksgiving tradition to watch has added to its legend as a great R-rated comedy.
And time. All right, JD, back over to you when you begin speaking.
John Landis had a lot on his plate when it came to Blues Brothers. There are some musical dance sequences, and you have 2 leads with limited dancing ability. Somehow, John Landis was able to create this brilliant Baptist church sequence where the Blues Brothers, played by John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, are somehow possessed on God, and it's actually believable. It's an impressive musical sequence. As mentioned before, you also have these insane car chases, a lot of which was done practically. For example, the mall sequence was in a recently shut down mall in a Chicago suburb called Dixie Square Mall. Another example is the final car chase sequence. They actually dropped a Ford Pinto to represent the Illinois Nazis' transportation, and they dropped it with a helicopter 15,000 feet in the air. These practical effects really add to the slapstick insanity of this film. But the ultimate difference between this film and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is how the rated R rating is utilized. Blues Brothers has this irrelevant humor. The Illinois Nazis and Good Old Boys alone would get cut out without the raw R rating, and I think it would be a lesser film for it. I'm saying this as a proud Jewish man. The film is lesser if the Blues Brothers are not mowing down the Chicago Nazi parade saying, fuck the Illinois Nazis, or Jake selling a seemingly supernatural nun that she's up shit creek twice for not accepting their money. There are scenes like that just make, as opposed to like Shannon said, there's only one scene in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles that utilizes the R rating. And I don't think that scene the F-bombs is not what makes that scene funny. It's actually the fact that Steve Martin is pissed off. I think this actually works better. Plane Change Lava works better as an PG-13 movie than R-rated.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. As a reminder, guys, just with the discussion, be respectful of each other's time, make the point, and then allow the other person to rebut. But with that said, 4 minutes on the clock when the first competitor speaks.
So yeah, I think I covered the fact that Blues Brothers needs that R rating. I think the other kind of problem that I kind of have with Plane, Trains, and Automobiles is this kind of mean streak the film has. And it also is trying to be a holiday movie. And I don't think that sentimentality and meanness kind of mesh with each other in a 90-minute movie. If you had a 2-hour movie, I think it would be better utilized.
Okay, I would like you to elaborate what the mean strength of the Planes and Trains Automobiles in a little bit. I feel like it actually has, like, I mean, its sentimentality with it. What's going on is I mean, like you said, it works as a holiday movie because especially during the time where people are used to being like having to rush over to try to get to families the holiday Thanksgiving dinner and stuff, and knows like how like it seems like especially the travels, like, it seemed like the work against you being able to do it or whatever, and you sometimes have to be around people that you would think wouldn't be with otherwise and might annoy you. And I would like to say it works with like Steve Martin's and John Candy's chemistry. That, I mean, that John Candy plays somebody that can be annoying, but we still good-hearted enough that we still we enjoy seeing.
Can I tell you why I think that this mean streak and sentimentality doesn't match? I think it's partly to do with the runtime, but it's also the fact that you see throughout the whole movie, Steve Martin and John Candy. I rewatched this when doing this up. It's the fact that the whole movie, they're basically kind of Steve Martin is at basically John Candy's throat for most of the movie. Like, he doesn't want to be with him, and he does everything in his power to leave him, and he can't. But then they also want to go back to, oh, it's a holiday film, and and to do that in 90 minutes, I think it felt rushed to me. That is my personal opinion. 90 minutes is not enough time to kind of sell that these people are like actually they enjoy each other's company by the end of it. I didn't buy it.
Well, that's kind of, I mean, it's subjective reading, but I think most people would say that watching or whatever that they completely understand. I mean, you might be annoyed. Steve Martin might be annoyed with John Candy, but after a while, I mean, they grow like a bond together. He actually, once he knows what John Candy's character has gone through or whatever, that he understands even more, and invites him at the end to his family, the family's dinner, and that's a touching scene. Whereas Blues Brothers is over 2.5 hours, and musicals
it's 2 hours
are nice, but they stop the movie dead in its tracks. There's there's hardly any comedic moments, especially that are done with the musical numbers.
I disagree. This movie is very funny. Again, I talked about the after Chicago Nazis as they mow down the thing. I also the supernatural nun that they go up to. There's a bit where they're going back to their childhood orphanage, and they kind of walk up, and they walk up, and the door automatically opens, and they're just freaked out. I also, as I said, it's 2 hours and 13 minutes, and it's sold as a musical comedy, which for a musical, that's actually fairly short. 2 hours and 30, most musicals are about 2 hours and a half. So again, I think the pace is actually kind of perfect. Is that I generally, and again, the slapstick.
Really, what is it that's so R-rated that could? I mean, you say about Nazis, Robert. I don't think that is a deal breaker even now. That you can still make fun of Nazis.
I don't think you can.
And also, I don't think shit is you can still say shit in PG.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go on to the 1 minute closings, guys. Shannon, you are up first. You can continue your point or start something new. That is your choice to do what you like with your minute.
Again, yeah, like as far as like R-rated comedies go, yeah, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is not like a super like vulgar except for that one scene. But I would argue that one scene is like, yeah, it's like the build up that character to at least to the halfway point of that film. You like you said, it's like him like blowing up and then having basically the world say, well, fuck you, you're still screwed as far as like what you're doing. And again, I don't never understand like where the Blues Brothers can still get away from has to be R-rated. Again, you could, I mean, nothing. There's like none of the fucks in the movie could be I could see could be easily edited out, and it still could be a funny movie with a hard PG rating. But like I said, I think whose screenplay and John Cage's performance with Dell is what makes him an electrical user to a fully fleshed character. And we go from laughing at him to loving him with convenient heart, John Candy. And I feel like the fact that they never got to work together is a tragedy.
And time. All right, JD, 1 last minute on the clock, sir, when you begin speaking.
Again, I think that Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, more than the kind of the mishmash of tones, is the fact it doesn't utilize its R rating. To me, the fact that Steve Martin is angry is actually what makes the scene funny. It's not the F-bombs. It's the fact that he's angry. He's just out of luck. It's not his meanness. Whereas, as I said, there would be so many without the R rating. There would be so many. You couldn't do Illinois Nazis without the R rating because there would be issues about political correctness and political correctness and issues with the right and the left and like what they think about it. I generally like, and yes, like, and it wouldn't be as funny without the F-bombs. Fuck, it's telling a Nazi to go fuck himself. It's more funny than without it. It just is. See the rest of my time. If that wasn't clear.
All right. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back as I bring in our judges for the decision making. So just a couple of quick small fact checks here. So when it comes to the runtimes, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is right at the 1.5 hour mark. It is 1 hour and 33 minutes long. Blues Brothers is not quite 2.5 hours. It is, as was said, 2 hours and 13 minutes. So even though it's not quite 2.5 hours, it is exactly 40 minutes longer than Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So that is a good bit of extra time added. And since it was brought up multiple times throughout the match, I decided to, again, using the best that I could, look up the validity of the Blues Brothers and its rating, and using the website commonsensemedia.org, which itself rates what age range a film should be good for kids, as well as allows parents to have their say. While the website's experts say that the film is good for 16 and plus, the average consensus of parents say that it's actually okay for 12 plus, with the only thing in the movie being not good for kids is the excessive profanity. But the fact that the movie even does include Nazis is something that most parents don't seem to have an issue with. So again, obviously it was a movie made in the 80s. Ratings are different nowadays compared to then, but arguably this is a movie that could have gotten away with what at the time was a PG rating without the cursing. The cursing is what probably puts it over the edge. But it's not about the fun facts that I look up. It is about the arguments. Alejandro, I go to you first, sir. As concise as you can get it for me. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I enjoy your facts, Aaron. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I love both of these movies. I think there were some really good points brought up for both. I really don't know what JD was talking about the runtime not being long enough and not understanding Steve Martin playing the straight man instead of the banana in that movie. But ultimately, for better use of the R rating and also my favorite selling point, fuck Nazis, I went with the Blues Brothers. JD.
Okay. We're going to go down to Henry. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
So there was 2 elements to this question that were like super important, the R rating and the comedy. And they were kind of going back and forth, mostly just debating one point and not the whole movie as a whole. And I feel like JD was able to knock down the fact that the R rating is not utilized as well in Planes, Train, and Automobile, while his is. So even though I hate Blues Brothers and it's a trash movie, I went with JD.
Always finding a way to get your opinions in. Thank you, Henry. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.
Andrea, I look forward to hearing from you next round. But with that, JD will get the first vote. So we'll go ahead and send our judges back as we bring the competitors in and move on to question number 2, which is an interesting one because we are going in 2 very different directions here. Casting is one of the most crucial parts of a film. If a character isn't cast correctly, it can ultimately have a huge effect on the film. And I would say one of the hottest actors right now, whether it be looking at his small dramas or his more recent blockbuster appearances from things like Southpaw to Spider-Man No or Far From Home, Jake Gyllenhaal, despite the fact that Taylor Swift fans may hate his guts, is probably one of the biggest actors out there at the moment right now. And so the question that we have here is, if you could recast any role in film history with Jake Gyllenhaal instead of the original actor, what role would it be? Now, the reason I say we're going in 2 different directions here is because there is, with this question, and this is something for the judges to keep in mind, there was no restriction put on when the film had to be set. It doesn't have to be time relevant. You can pick any film from any point in history and cast any version of Jake Gyllenhaal from any point in history in the film. It's just simply what role would be better with Gyllenhaal instead of actor that was cast. But with that said, JD, I head over to you first, sir. The timer will appear, I will disappear, and it will start ticking when you begin speaking.
So I chose to swap Ty Burrell's Jean-Pierre Napoleon from Muppets Most Wanted for 2 reasons. Number 1, I actually think Muppets Most Wanted has a solid premise, a couple solid new characters, and it introduced an extremely underrated new Muppet. What went wrong is this film had a subplot that was miscast that stopped this movie dead in its tracks whenever that person was on, which I'll get more into in a minute. Also, number 2, during the pandemic, I was watching John Mulaney's John Mulaney and the Sad Bunch Gang, and Jake Gyllenhaal's cameo in that, just selfishly, I want to see that character in a Muppet movie. Point is, I think Jake Gyllenhaal would be perfect for what they actually wanted to do with the role. I see the rest of my time.
All right. As the clock winds down here, I'm going to take a second to remind everybody that in the history of Movie Battleground, I once had to argue why the Muppets would be great use for a sex film. Let's all think about that for a second. If you want to see a picture of sexually edited Muppets and Kermit getting anal fisted, go watch that match. Shannon, I turn over to you, sir. Try not to let what I just said affect you too much, but you do have 1 minute on the clock. Henry is furiously shaking his head in the background. He was there for it. It was a treat. Shannon, go ahead.
Wow. That's all I'll say to that. Well, with the massive success of the MCU, history, I think, has forgotten the importance of the first Blade movie and how it was the first Marvel character to have a successful box office hit. And Wesley Snipes' performance as Blade is iconic. You know what performance in that film isn't? Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost. It is generally agreed that Dorff's take on Deacon Frost is lackluster at best and boring at worst. That character deserved a much better performance than the one we got. It needs someone who can masterfully navigate between charismatic and creepy, and would make Deacon Frost a much more beloved villain than what he is considered now. That's why I would have Jake Gyllenhaal replace Stephen Dorff in Blade, and I concede the rest of my time.
All right. I don't have a weird sex-related story with Blade, so we're just going to jump the clock forward. JD, I'll make sure you get your 2 seconds there, but the timer will start ticking when you begin speaking.
So I need to talk about what Muppets Most Wanted did right before I can talk about how much of an improvement Jake Gyllenhaal would make in this movie. Mainly above else, you need to get the Muppets right, and this film did. From the opening moment, they referred to how Disney is forcing them to make a quick sequel, and they needed decent permits to get by. Let's do a world tour. That's so Muppets. Where this film went wrong is a subplot where the Muppets come under the nose of an Interpol inspector, Ty Burrell's character. There's a bunch of art robberies that Kermit's doppelganger Constantine is, orchestrating, and that's what gets the Interpol inspector involved. This is supposed to be like a Leslie Nielsen straight man type, somebody who played so straight that his roles are, his lines are actually funny. Because in the Muppets, most of the other characters are self-referential. You need a straight man to keep it serious. That's not what Ty Burrell did with the character. He did this stereotypical French accent. He also knew he was playing with the Muppets, and he hams it up, and he playing into that, and that's a no-no for a Muppet straight man. As I mentioned before, you need to play it so seriously because everybody else is going to make reference of the fact that of what's going on in the plot. That's not what the Muppet straight man's supposed to do. This is what I like to call the Keanu Barker effect from Dracula. A casting whose role is so prominent that whole chunks of the movies are unwatchable. I think the biggest Deacon Frost with Stephen Dorff as Frost is not the problem with the movie. It's the writing. No matter who you put in the role, he's supposed to be a new age college frat bro kind of vampire, and that's what Stephen Dorff plays it as. So it's not Stephen Dorff's portrayal, it's the writing.
And time. All right, Shannon, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes on the clock when you're ready.
Okay, I think Jake Gyllenhaal has proven he can play a cold evil in Nightcrawler, and has the inherent creepiness that he's shown in Donnie Darko to play a truly unhinged Deacon Frost. Gyllenhaal's Frost would actually convey the jealousy of being disrespected by his vampiric elders, and frankly, Gyllenhaal's workout routine would make him a physical equal to Snipes. And you were saying also about like the script being a problem with Stephen Dorff. Well, I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal at this point in his career could probably add a few notes and make sure that that Deacon Frost as a character would be able to be more of a full-fledged than what Stephen Dorff was ever able to have any power as far as the screenplay. Gyllenhaal replacing Ty Burrell in Muppets Most One would not work because the key to the human actors in Muppets films is that their performances match and don't overshadow the Muppets they're playing against. If you have Jake Gyllenhaal as Jean-Pierre Napoleon, it would take the audience immediately out of the film, and all they think about would be Gyllenhaal's goofy French accent. Burrow works because he is a character actor that has proven he can work well with comedic ensembles like the Modern Family. And that's why Tina Fey and Ricky Gervais are the only other main human actors throughout the film that have that. And I feel like if it would be in a Muppet film, he would be Gyllenhaal would be better as one of those celebrities in the film that have only one or two lines, like Lady Gaga contributes into the opening song of that film. And I feel like and as far as being the straight man, you're saying Ty Burrell's character straight man. Sam the Eagle is a straight man in the Autumn scenes. So yeah, actually, and Ty Burrell's he's playing a stereotype, but I mean that's kind of the joke. And also he kind of subverts that stereotype too, because he could have been a Spectre Constable, complete bubbling idiot, but he's not. So like I said, I feel like that's why it wouldn't work for it.
And time. All right, we're going to move into the 4-minute open discussion. I like the interplay you guys had last time. Let's get more of that going. Time starts when the first competitor speaks.
So initially, Christoph Waltz was initially supposed to play Jean-Pierre Napoleon, which tells you exactly what they were initially trying to do with the character. It was supposed to be, as I said, a Leslie Nielsen straight man who's supposed to be so serious that his lines are funny. And I feel like the lines in the movie, they're definitely that, but he's trying to ham it up with my wife kind of accent and Jake Gyllenhaal, I think, has proven that he knows his assignment. Above all else, Jake Gyllenhaal knows his assignment and will play his assignment. So no, I don't believe he will actually overshadow the Muppets. And speaking of Tina Fey and Ricky Gervais, they're so, they're so off the wall that in the movie, like Tina Fey is a prison guard who's in love with Kermit. That and Ricky Gervais is a sleazy agent that is trying to be that is actually a criminal. That I think, again, you needed a serious straight man, which Jake Gyllenhaal could have done and done brilliantly. I just remember watching watching Mr. Music and John Mulaney's that he's taken in the John Mulaney special, and he's taking being Mr. Music, this lesson of music is everywhere so seriously that he hasn't ever. That's the kind of role that John Pierre is supposed to be.
I understand, but it takes one more like comedic thing in a show that I feel like maybe not everybody has seen to prove that you could be able to handle with the Muppets, because it actually can be more in more tough order than what you would think it would be necessarily. And like I said, like him as Deacon Frost again, I can imagine Jake Gyllenhaal adding like a kind of a Patrick Bateman kind of kind of unhinged ability to that character that was never like shown. Like he was never a threat with that Stephen Dorff's performance or whatever. And like that final fight, it was you never could believe that Stephen Dorff could take Wesley Snipes. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal now could be able you could imagine him fighting Wesley Snipes, and you could be more of an interesting like the cross connection between them.
He's not the writing is the problem with that movie. And again,
and like I said, Jake Gyllenhaal has enough fight. He takes that right in for his character.
Let me finish. I wasn't done. Take Deacon Frost out of the movie. Okay, take that out of the movie. Say you get a slightly improved Jake Gyllenhaal. He's slightly improved. You still have all the other problems that Blade has. You have the fact that it's trying to be this. You have a bunch of studio heads that are trying to make it so cool for the modern audience, but it's old people trying to go for a younger audience, and it just doesn't work. You also have this problem where they have this, they feel they still are, it's still vampires, and they don't think that people will get that it's, this is a vampire world. So you need a cipher for the audience, and they just give you this bland, blasé, character in the name of, it does blame blasé love interest to be the cipher for the audience who, kind of take Deacon Frost out of it. You still have so many problems with this movie that the movie still sucks. I'm sorry.
We're not talking about we're talking about like what would you've changed performance whatever. I mean, like I said, that again, I'm saying that adding Jake Gyllenhaal as a role would make that better. Whereas like you're saying about what most wanted, I feel you let me have I let you have your time. You let me have my time, please. Like I said, what the Muppets most want again, I feel like Gyllenhaal in that role again, it works better when you have like comedic character actors as the main people and not major stars.
And that will be time. We're gonna go into the 1 minute closings. JD, you're up first when you begin speaking.
See, I disagree that you need comedic actors necessarily, and I think Jake Gyllenhaal proves he is comedic between Ambulance and again John Mulaney Sandbox Stage Special. You do need a straight man because you have so many other off the wall characters that you need somebody to ground it or whatever. And one of the most unforgivable sins in Muppet movies is that there are a lot of actors that play into the Muppets where the Muppets are actually like a feeder troupe. So Jake Gyllenhaal knows his assignment. Above all else, he knows his assignment. And again, take Deacon Frost out of it. Like, take Deacon Frost out of the movie. You still have so many issues with the movie. Putting Jake Gyllenhaal in the movie is not going to significantly improve Blade. Whereas I think taking this one subplot would make Muppets Most Wanted from a bottom 2 Muppets movie to maybe like a top 5 Muppets movie. I truly believe that.
And time. All right, Shannon, back over to you, sir.
Yeah, I think it's funny how you're saying like how like Ty Burrell was not. Like, I mean, you can be it's like a hindrance to like it's a comedy film. Whereas like I think the Emmys and the viewership of Modern Family would heavily disagree as far as like how like abhorrent like he was into working with an ensemble cast for comedy. So I mean, like I said, like again, I feel like he works perfectly fine with the rest of the film, whereas I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal in that film would just again, it would be people would be talking about like Jake Gyllenhaal doing this weird French accent and just like kept thinking about like forgetting about the rest of the movie and forgetting about like all the other like cool like cameos or something from people that big names actors like again like actors. It's a big thing about the Muppets is that actors doing that film. And again, Deacon Frost. Again, think how much more charismatic and more interesting that person would be with Jake Gyllenhaal, like being the steely-eyed intensity and creepiness as he was like in Nightcrawler and Donnie Darko. And I can see the rest of my time.
And that will be the argument. Good round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and send you both to the back to bring in the judges. So the only real fact check that I attempted to look up was basically there was a lot of discussion about the approaches to specifically the character of Jean-Pierre Napoleon in Muppets Most Wanted. And a point that was made and kind of discussed back and forth is the idea of what is the intention of the character. As presented in the film, the intention, according to what I could find, it seems as though the character was played the way that he was intended to be. Now, that's a different argument as for whether that works for you or not, but it seems as though the character was intended the way it was always meant to be played. If you look at the dates of when Christoph Waltz dropped from negotiations for the film and when Ty Burrell was picked up for the role, there's just not nearly enough time for them to try and make any kind of changes to the script to accommodate for Ty Burrell's casting. So it appears as though the characters that they're playing would have been, if not identical, then very similar. Obviously, again, there's a lot of subjective views there and how you look at that, but just to try and clear that up as much as possible, at least in terms of the intention of the filmmakers, it does not seem like any changes were made to accommodate from Christoph Waltz to Ty Burrell because there just simply wouldn't have been the time. But with all of that put together, it is about the arguments that were made. Henry, you're up first, sir. Who gets your vote and what was the selling point?
As always, just a reminder, let people talk, balanced, everything. And if your opponent gives you a chance to talk and then it's their turn, don't cut them off. But with that said, I feel like Shannon won this pretty handily. He convinced me that Jake Gyllenhaal would be a better replacement and knocked down the fact that JD hit that his kind of wouldn't really stand apart from the role. So Shannon gets my point there.
Okay, so the first vote goes to Shannon. Andrea, down to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
Okay, my vote also goes to Shannon. The main reason that I have is because he was able to really show me the movies that Jake Gyllenhaal had that would make him a great fit for the character that he said in Blade. Whereas I think JD missed that and discussed more subjectively instead of really showing me facts.
Okay. All right. Well, it is a 1-1 game. Judges, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and send you to the back. Keep smiling, Alejandro, as I bring in the competitors, and we will move on to round number 3. And as we move on to round number 3, we're going to be talking about classic film. Classic cinema. Again, not something that comes up very often, but I said that, and now it's come up multiple times since I said that. So, hey, awesome. The question is, what is the best James Stewart film, better known to the common man as Jimmy Stewart, although I don't know if he would have liked you to call him that. I never met him personally. He's the face of classic cinema almost, or one of the faces. He's been in tons of movies. And I think these guys picked out some solid ones to debate about. So we'll go ahead and move into it. Shannon, you are up first on the front for this argument, so I will allow you to begin your round when you are ready.
Yes, this was a very difficult question considering James Stewart. I consider him one of my favorite actors, and this was and also because he's been in many like undisputed classics we can all agree on. But I believe the 1950s was the most interesting time in his career. That's the time when he focused on playing morally gray protagonists. You can see it throughout his work, like with in westerns with the Anthony Mann. But he did show that too. But I think this was an extremely hot. This morally gray area was highlighted by his participation with several Alfred Hitchcock films. But the one I want to focus on is Rear Window, which I feel is the perfect culmination of James Stewart and Alfred Hitchcock's talents, and it's the best James Stewart film. I will concede the rest of my time.
All right, so the first film on the table is Rear Window. Absolutely, in terms of just talking about the film itself, it is considered a classic. But JD's got another one that is highly regarded. JD, you have a minute to talk about said film when you begin speaking.
So yeah, this question is really best film featuring James Stewart. With that in mind, I chose one of the first films that introduced the tropes that would create the rom-com as we know it today, the Philadelphia Story. As mentioned, it has almost everything you would expect out of a rom-com. You know, a rich heiress gets married for the second time and everybody adores her. Her ex-husband acts like he was over her, but it's not really a rom-com. That's because, you know, romantic comedies didn't really jumpstart to the success of this film. This was all done because of character and story. There's a function to like this, to the tropes. There's no weird, character logic leaps to try to fit it into a drama since it wasn't created yet. I was expecting a typical rom-com. Instead, I found a great film that went in a direction I kind of didn't expect, and it gave James Stewart his only Oscar win. I stand by this question is not about performance, but it still has an all-time greater from James Stewart.
All right, we're going to move back over to Rear Window. 2 minutes on the clock, Shannon. And you are muted.
Sorry. I feel like Rear Window is the best James Stewart film because Stewart perfectly encapsulates being the ultimate Hitchcock surrogate. It was said that Hitchcock said that in his films that Cary Grant would play characters who he fantasized he was, but that James Stewart would play the characters who Hitchcock felt that he really was. Through Stewart, we see Hitchcock's themes of voyeurism and obsession. However, because of Stewart's inherent likability, instead of thinking him as a snoopy creep, we identify with him and root for him throughout the film to find out if the neighbor is an actual murderer or not. And I argue that Stewart's romantic chemistry with Grace Kelly in Rear Window is more vivid and smoldering than what his chemistry was with Katharine Hepburn in the Philadelphia Story. I feel like the main problem with the Philadelphia Story, for spoiler for an 80-plus-year-old film, is that Hepburn marries Cary Grant at the end of that film. That's supposed to be her former husband, despite the halfway setup that James Stewart and her have this really great romantic connection. And that was because the Hays Code dissuaded a possible portrayal of extramarital affairs and the popularity of the comedy of remarriage genre. And this insertion kind of ruins the ending of the film because Hepburn's reasons to get back with Cary Grant don't make much sense. And we see them, we're going to make the same mistake again. Whereas I feel like the Rear Window, again, it's a perfect script, perfect direction. We follow through James Stewart's character throughout the film. We feel like, we tense up whenever we post Grace Kelly and feel like in danger and stuff. And again, I feel like once at the very end, when you see that the neighbor figure out it's him and is coming toward him, and that's just he's completely handicapped and he can't move, and he's he's like impotent. Like Hitchcock shows impotence throughout all his other films, and I think it's the perfect encapsulation of a Hitchcock film and James Stewart's performances as an all-American actor.
And time. All right, JD, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes on the clock.
I think the best films are the films that surprise you. And I'll start talking about James Stewart in this film. It's one of the, I think it's, one of the rare films, James Stewart generally has an archetype. This is a rare film where he plays against type, and he's all the better for it. He's this sleazy tabloid reporter named Mike who tries to export Katharine Hepburn's character in some controversial act. She's a rich heiress, but the controversial act she commits involves him. Again, I'll cut to the chase because Shannon mentioned it already. This is a film about infidelity, and it came out in 1940. That's a no-no, again, because of the Cage Code Act. The way to get around this is the night before the wedding, they kind of show her go up to the bed, but they don't show what happens. But they act like, they actually did the act, and everybody is like shocked and dumbfounded. There's actually fallout from the infidelity. In particular, how the particular classes, her fiance, for example, that she's getting married to, he came from a working class background, and just the mere act of infidelity is like he disowns her immediately. And I disagree with you that she ends up with the wrong guy. She actually does end up with the wrong guy, the right guy actually, because Cary Grant is the only person who sees her and accepts her for who she actually is. Not even James Stewart's character thinks that it doesn't see her for who she is. He sees her as like a goddess that needs to be admired and God over. Cary Grant is the only one who accepts her, flaws and all, accepts her on her worst days and her best days. Therefore, I disagree fundamentally with the argument that she ends up with the wrong person.
And time. All right, let's go into that 4-minute open discussion, boys. Time starts when the first person speaks.
Yeah, I feel like I understand what you're saying as far as like the Philadelphia story in it, but I feel like, again, like the Hays Code, like you can see is a film that is trying to juggle with that Hays Code restriction, and it doesn't necessarily end like the setting that the ending that it comes up with doesn't exactly work with the film we were seeing. You're saying that that she had this thing, she has moments with Cary Grant. They do have it, but it's predominantly most of it once she and James Stewart get together. It is mostly like their connection is so great or whatever. You forget about her and want to get back with Cary Grant until the very end when they want her with her.
Because they're setting up the fact that it's a movie about infidelity. That's what I think you're missing. This is not a comedy in traditional sense. It is a film about infidelity, and they spend more time with a little bit more time with James Stewart because he's the one that she has the infidelity act with. That's why. But you still get a very decent amount of time with Cary Grant at the beginning. You understand your relationship. You understand that he's still not over her, despite the fact he says that he is, especially with the wedding gift, to give her, there's this wedding gift that like symbolizes their love from their first marriage, a boat that they kind of made love on and where they fell in love, the true love. The amount of time and care that it takes to set up character and story, I think it cannot be underestimated here. And that's why I generally put this above even Rear Window. My biggest issue with Rear Window is an issue I have with most Hitchcock movies that I have in the 50s. And let's be honest, we both picked two really great movies. We're nitpicking here. Let's be honest with each other. But the biggest problem I have is that it's the same issue that most Hitchcock movies have. They're about 30 minutes too long. They should be 90 minutes, and they're always 2 hours. there's always like he slows it down like one or two too many times to slow down the tension where it should just be like a 90-minute tension filled, throughout. He always has to prove, and I love Alfred Hitchcock, and I hate to be this guy, but he always has to prove that like he's a brilliant filmmaker, and he has to always put one or two too many camera tricks, and they're cool camera tricks, but like there at a certain point, it's like at a certain point, I feel like it's enough already, and he always has to explain to the audience what's happening, and he doesn't trust the audience to pick it up by himself. So there always has to be scenes to explain what's going on one too many times. That's my biggest problems with Rear Window.
Well, I mean, we can be subjective about as far as like whether or not you feel like Hitchcock movies are too long or whatever. I feel like this one, like we're talking about this one movie, and I feel like it holds its time perfectly as far as like introducing all the different characters like through a window that with all that we know all of what the main stuff we need to know about them through through James Stewart's like peripheral vision, and then again throughout the movie we see like different little plot lines with them that we see more character growth, and that very end like it works with that too. Like again, he uses his theme to voyeurism like he's using other films, but again it works well with film because we're actually like it's with a purpose. Like we're using like a photographer who's so bored that he watches his neighbors thinking, oh, just get a sheep out watching these mundanities or whatever. And then he finds out one of them is murder, and it's like people think, oh, you're just bored and you're just trying to find shit to stir or whatever. But again, I feel like that's what's the genius about it.
All right, and that will be time on the 4-minute discussion. We are going to go to closings. Shannon, you are up first with 1 minute on the clock, sir.
While George Cukor, the director of Philadelphia Story, is a great director. He worked on several great films throughout that time. I feel like the Philadelphia Story is much of a filmic style of the time. While Hitchcock's direction in Rear Window was groundbreaking, and the film used all Stewart's talents, whereas the Philadelphia Story kind of limits him more as the comedic drunk, you were saying, and comedic drunk, and I think he played that better in movie than like Harvey and like other films. But I think, like I said, James Stewart has always worked with me as the morally gray protagonist that we inherently like, but even when he does stuff that is like despicable, like what he pulls through Grace Kelly through that film, we're like, you're kind of going over the line as far as like what you're wanting your fiance to be accomplished to, and again, it shows how great of an actor he was and how great Hitchcock could use him, that he could use that inherent likability. We still could root for him, even though we could admit that he is doing stuff that we wouldn't, as an audience, have extreme problems with.
All right, that will be time on that argument. JD, over to you. Final minute for the round.
So there's a reason that a genre was jump started with the Philadelphia Story. Besides being a great film, it was a rare box office smash that was an awards dog. Nominated for 6 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress. And it won 2. It won James Stewart's only Oscar, which again I think it was a brilliant performance. And it also saved Jimmy Stewart's career. Again, Jimmy Stewart doesn't necessarily make it to Rear Window without this movie. He was trying to be a leading man around this time. And yes, he had Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but he was coming off a bunch of box office flops. If this movie doesn't work, he doesn't get to Rear Window, because then he goes off to war and he doesn't come until the late 40s. Again, I don't think that necessarily makes my movie better, but if nothing else, I hope my argument for what a great movie this is.
All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back to bring in the judges as we go ahead and move on to here. Nothing to fact check, nothing egregious was said that needed to be searched. So, Andrea, I go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Um, Based on the arguments that were made, I'm going to give my vote to oof. The conclusion really made me change my mind a couple of times in that, but I think I'd have to go with JD again. I think he was able to give a lot more arguments as to why his particular movie was the best James Stewart movie that.
Alejandro, I go down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I mean, I really like both of these movies. A lot of great points made. There's no arguing that the Philadelphia Story is the most critically acclaimed of the two movies. I'm a big Hitchcock fan. I'm a big James Stewart fan, so I happen to see both of these. I ended up going with Rear Window, giving it to Shannon. The main selling point being that it's subjective for the timestamp. Like it's irrelevant. Tell a good story. It doesn't matter how long it takes.
All right. So we're going to go over to Henry then for the tiebreaker. It's a 1-1 in terms of votes. Who gets your vote, Henry?
So Shannon really had me in his opening, and then JD did a good job with the rebuttal and kind of sell me in the open round of why Philadelphia Story is good, because I think that movie's mad overrated. And then Shannon had a really good closing, and unfortunately JD kind of lost me actually in his closing, kind of contradicting himself with going back and forth and trying to say like, oh, around that time he's not doing much, and it's kind of like without this movie you don't really have that. And I really don't feel like that's kind of just some moot points that kind of broke the tie for me. So I'm going to go with Shannon.
All right. Judges, thank you guys so much. Go ahead and send you guys to the back to bring the competitors back on screen as we will go ahead and move on to question number 4 for this match. And question number 4 is related to something that absolutely dominates the space. The most recent entry in this series, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, was released a couple of weeks ago at this point. I'd venture to say, mixed critical reception. I think the people who really loved it. I don't know if there's anyone who hated it necessarily, but it doesn't seem to have won over all the hearts the way previous Marvel films have. And if there's one thing that Marvel films are good at doing, it is winning over people's hearts. But I want to talk about the films that are more like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in terms of reception. So we're going to take it back. We're going to go from phase 4 to phase 3. And maybe one of these guys is just going to sit here and shit on a film. But I would argue, in my own personal opinion, that the MCU doesn't have a bad movie. That doesn't mean it doesn't have a worst. The question is, what is the worst film in phase 3 of the MCU? This is to date the longest phase of films. It was the culmination of all the story beats that we had seen building over the last few years and the setup of a few others we've seen play out since. But which one just didn't hit the mark? JD, you're going to be opening this round. I'm going to bring the timer up for you, and it will begin when you start speaking.
If I'm forced to choose a worst movie from Phase 3, there is one choice for me. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 suffers from sequelitis. It has too many ideas, which I'll get into in a bit. It also doesn't know who the villain is until very late. In the meantime, it teases you with red herring number 1 and number 2, neither of which really go anywhere. I really do hate the usage of the Sovereign in this. They're basically sequel bait. The film doesn't know what it wants to be. That is Guardians of the Galaxy's Volume 2's biggest failing. I see the rest of my time.
All right, didn't want to cut you off there just in case, but we'll go ahead and jump that timer forward. And Shannon, when it rolls over to 0, you can begin your film.
I don't think it's a bold statement to say that the MCU in general has had a problem with making standalone female solo superhero films, especially around Phase 3. And for all its leaky problems, the DCU did something that completely embarrassed the MCU, if not only had a solo female superhero that came out before the MCU with Wonder Woman, but it also was warmly received by comic book fans. Because of this, the MCU used Captain Marvel not only as its first solo female superhero origin film, but as a bridge to Endgame, planting seeds for the future, but also referencing the past. But however, Captain Marvel kind of really buckled under that weight of all them expectations and left I feel most viewers and fans disappointed, and that's why I say it is the worst Phase 3 MCU film, and I will concede the rest of my time.
All right, so the battle is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 versus Captain Marvel. It is the sequel versus the origin. Who fucked it up more? JD, 2 minutes on why yours is.
As I mentioned before, I think this film has too many ideas and too many plot lines in it. Maybe there are like 4 different plot lines in it, and maybe only 1 or 2 land as they should. You have the Gamora Nebula storyline about, they're being siblings of Thanos, and then you also have the Rocket, Baby Groot, and Yondu storyline, and as well as the Star-Lord and Ego storyline, and then the Sovereign storyline. Then Drax and Mantis are less as useless comic relief. The only 2 that really work is the Ego Star Wars storyline and the Rocket Baby Groot Yondu storyline, because they go back to the found family themes as number 1. You screwed again. You have issues with your biological family, but hey, you can choose the family that you want to choose. And I think Yondu's Ryan is really good with that. But the Sovereign storyline doesn't go anywhere. It's really just to set up Adam Warlock for number 3. And then Gamora and Nebula is just rushed. It's rushed. There's just not enough real estate left in the 2-hour-ish movie. 2 hours and 17 if you add the 10 minutes of credits that they added to the end of the movie. I think people are looking at Volume 2 in retrospect because of Infinity War and Endgame. And they forgive the Gamora and Nebula storyline more. But, it's just, if James Gunn spent more time focusing on, the 2 plot lines that worked, this film would be on more solid ground. I see the rest of my time.
All right. Shannon, it is over to you now, sir, for Captain Marvel. The time will continue when you speak.
Well, I feel like Brie Larson does a commendable job as Captain Marvel. The direction and screenplay, I think, let her down big time. The biggest problem in the film, I feel, is it doesn't give her a strong character, and by the end, when the character becomes practically invincible and has no flaws, and it makes a character that didn't have any depth, like no longer interesting. And I kind of feel like it kind of hampered throughout, like her appearances throughout the Endgame. The film likes clarity of a distinct villain. I was wondering you mentioned about red herrings, but this one definitely has a red herring. First, it's the Skrulls are the bad guys, and they're all after her, and then it's revealed to be the Kree, even though we kind of know the Kree are kind of shit first because they're working with Roland the Accuser, everybody's favorite MCU film. And it doesn't add anything new with that introduction. The movie likes any tension we have as an audience as well. It's a Carol knowing what's going on, and it takes way too long for her to even catch up what's going on with the audience is way ahead of her. That's helping our care and interest of the most important character of the MCU. And by the way, do you know that Captain Marvel takes place in the 1990s? If you didn't, make sure to hammer it every 5 minutes with references. And there's no scenes where Carol feels aware of her powers, and specifically for more it didn't focus on the negative aspects of the power she has. Most characters are given no time to really develop, like Annette Bening's Marvel and Jude Low's Young Rock. I mean, the Goose has more character than most of the characters in this film. Also, I'd say Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it does have, all them plot lines you do, the main ones you were talking about, they all are important in that they grow the character growth what we met in the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like Mantis and Drax's communication is important for her being a future member team, and then you're saying about Gamora and Nebula, that's important for her to be again a member of a team as well. And again, it's as I said, as they said, the words come more at this point.
And time.
So,
All right.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's fine. When you speak, we know the drill.
I forgot that you got to move on to the next round. I'm sorry. I apologize.
All good. You can start. Go ahead.
All right. So I think so first off, it's not the importance, it's the execution is what I was getting at. I think the execution of the Gamora and Nebula storyline is rushed. There's just not enough real estate left. They spent Nebula is most of the time just as a wild card, and then like 2/3 into the movie they remember, oh yeah, they're supposed to be reconciled by the end of the movie so we can get into Infinity War, and it is rushed. It has no emotional impact. Same thing with as I said, same thing with Sovereign. Storyline. It is just sequel bait for Adam Warlock. It is just they're just basically there so Adam Warlock
But one part of
number
the
3,
film.
and they are not focused. He's so focusing on setting up future films that they don't have that there's not enough real estate to actually focus on what matters. That's what I was getting at in my again. I think that was there, but in case that wasn't clear, that's what I was getting at.
I think David, but I feel like again that you're saying that it's stuff that's like showed like the end credits film, but as far as the film itself, I feel like it does a great job as far as like again like showing like how like the Quill is like his he feels like he's found like fodder, source for fodder, and then it turns out like again I was saying about Captain Marvel, the problem with her having more powers, he realized that Pure Quill would be completely even more it would not be an interesting character but with these godlike powers, so they find a way to so he can be able to get rid of them until he does that, and it involves sacrifice of his adopted father Yondu, and that whole emotional arc that rips my heart out every time I see that film.
Again, as I said, if there weren't, I agree. I agree that Quill and Ego work, but you have 3 other storylines that don't work. As for your Captain Marvel point, for its minor flaws, and I actually think it's minor flaws, the film knows what it is. The film absolutely knows what it is. It is a film about it's a buddy cop comedy about a woman trying to rediscover her identity and independence. It's robbed from her. That's why the amnesia storyline is going there. To me, that is not a fatal flaw. And there's so much good in Captain Marvel. I see you didn't mention like Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson's like chemistry. They are great in the movie. They're so funny together, so fun when they're around. They're talking about, I won't tell my boss if you won't tell your boss. And then Mendelsohn as Talos is a hoot. And I've been saying this forever. Lon-Shawn Lynch as Maria Rambeau. She should have her own Disney Plus miniseries. There's a lot good in that movie, and I will always take a movie that knows what it is over something that doesn't. And Guardians of the Galaxy just doesn't know what film it wants to be. It has the family elements, but we also want to introduce this world to you. But hey, it doesn't really mean anything till later, and that may not actually happen. And I feel like to me, it's unfocused. It is very unfocused. It is completely unfocused. And again, for the Ego and Quill storyline and the Yondu Rocket storyline, you didn't have the Nebula Gamora storyline and the Sovereign line that doesn't really have time to land the way it should. That's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
You're talking about like the Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson parts. Yeah, they are, I would say, the best parts of that film, but it's not enough of them to make up for the lack of character. I mean, and it takes a while before that even happens, before they meet together and we have this blank slate of a character.
And time. All right, we're going to go on to the 1-minute closings. JD, you're up first when you speak.
I will always take a film that knows what it is over a film that's not. And Captain Marvel knows what film it is. There's no denying that James Gunn is a brilliant filmmaker. He's just not always a good director. He's very similar to Zack Snyder, that they both have amazing ideas, but they're reluctant to let go of what's not working. There's no getting around the fact that there is so many sequel teases besides the one I mentioned before. There's also, let's introduce Yondu's old gang led by Sly Stallone, and has Michelle Yeoh and Bill Ames and Miley Cyrus. What do they have to do with this plot? He's just there to tell Yondu how disappointed he is in him. But, the Ravagers spinoff that's going to happen is going to be tight. But it's not going to happen because James Gunn, even though he was eventually brought back as the director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he was not brought back as the space star of the MCU. He was not brought back as that. So you're never going to get that Ravagers spinoff that they were teasing. It just was unfocused.
And time. All right, Shannon, over to you for the final minute of the round.
Okay, I think it's interesting. We're bringing up, we're more bringing up James Gunn and his authorship. I would say that I think is the main the connective tissue of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that works so well. Where we have not talked at all, or have been brought up all the directors of Captain Marvel that I don't think really put a really stamp. And I think that the weaker MCU films don't have an authorship that works well with it. And like with James Gunn, the Neil drops, like again, Yondu's funeral. You have a heart of stone. Like it's a brilliant use of Cat Stevens' father's son that makes my eyes water every time I see it. Living on a rocket at the end shows how far we come as progression of CGI in the last 2 decades. And again, I feel like Captain Marvel feels like a Phase 1 MCU film trapped in a Phase 3 film, and this is the main reason why it's disappointing. Again, it's not a terrible film; it just is a disappointing film for what it was working up to be.
And time. Okay, guys, another really good round. I'm gonna go ahead and sit both of you in the back while the judges make their calls. Go ahead and send you to the back and bring the judges forward. Alejandro, I head over to you first, sir. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Great picks on both again, but I think once again I am going to go with Shannon for Captain Marvel because he's absolutely correct. It's an absolute disappointment, that movie, and it is no fault of anybody on screen. Everybody's working their ass off to try to get it together. It just doesn't piece together the way anybody wants it to.
All right, Henry, down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the selling point? You're muted.
I never do that. For me personally, Captain Marvel's at my bottom, and Guardians is actually right outside my top 10. But JD did a great job of knocking Guardians 2 and actually defending Captain Marvel. So I actually had JD almost this entire round.
All right. Andrea, I go over to you then for the tie-breaking vote. Who gets it, and what was the selling point?
I would have to go with Shannon on this one. Because it's really a B for me. If you show somebody, when asked what is the worst film in Phase 3, you shouldn't give your opponent any window as to why your movie is good. And JD was like saying good parts of his movie instead of focusing on the worst aspects of it. So I would have to go. I would have to give my vote to Shannon in this one.
All right. Well, judges, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys into the back because your winner by a final score of 3-1 is Shannon Briggs, coming in with the win that he has been looking for. Sir, congratulations. A very good performance. Not that your previous ones have been bad at all by any means, especially considering you went up against someone like Amaru, who had played multiple times before and had experience on your debut, and you took him to the ropes. But now that performance pays off in a win. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling good. It was again. It was I commend JD. I brought very interesting picks and arguments and that. And I will add that about the going back to the Jake Gyllenhaal question about Muppets. I think it's crazy that Jake Gyllenhaal has not appeared in a Muppet film, but of all people, Hornswoggle from WWE appears in that film. It's just crazy. I will give him that. How crazy, like little cameos about that. But yeah, it feels good. It feels like my first win. It feels like a big weight has been left off my shoulders. So hopefully I can kind of continue the momentum that I have gotten with this win and can continue to improve and with my future matches.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my last question for you before we let you go and kind of just personally enjoy the victory, so to speak, is at some point in the future, at this point, looking at the scheduling, it'll probably be sometime later this summer, we'll be able to kind of get people back in and get them going for another match. And is there anyone on the roster who you're aware of or know that would interest you in being an opponent, or is it just kind of whatever comes your way you'll take?
Oh, I mean, I'm not picky. I mean, I will. I mean, I'm willing to wait. Face anybody that it turns out how it works or whatever. I feel like work again, but playing with Amaru during this kind of again helped give me kind of more experience about how things work and stuff. And I feel like I just like I said, I don't have a specific person I'm gunning for facing or whatever, but like I said, it turns out that I end up meeting one of the big ones again or whatever. Down my journey on these matches, and so be it. But like I said, I feel like I'm improving, so hopefully it will. I will be like whoever I face next. It will, without doubt, be a good fight no matter what for me.
Absolutely. Well, I can guarantee you three things. It won't be Amaru because he's got a positive record. That just wouldn't be fair statistically. It won't be JD because you just played him. That'd be really weird to make you guys fight again. And it won't be Abel because he retired one match after he played you. So it'll be somebody different. That is what I can get.
Wow.
It was a whole thing. He got knocked out. He didn't feel good, but it was a whole thing. But shout out to Abel. He's a great guy. It won't be anyone you've played. Who it will be, we will find out, sir. Congratulations once again. And we'll see you next time that you are back here. As I go ahead and send you to the back and bring in your opponent, Mr. JD Domash. JD, sir, again, I don't know how hard you're taking the loss, considering you came into this almost kind of wanting it, as if it helps cement your legacy in a different way. But your performance was improved. And I mean that wholeheartedly over your last two matches, specifically the knockout against Matt. I think your performance was improved here. And the biggest hump that I think you got over as a competitor is not giving up on yourself, because I feel like there was a little bit of that against Matt. Even when you went down here, you still fought like you had a chance in this, and you did give yourself a good chance. So how are you feeling? Is it happy? Because most people don't feel that when they lose, but I want to know.
I'm 0-3. How do you think I feel?
And then I with confidence, I can say I don't know. My record's better than that.
You were in title contention. At least you had that going for you.
Listen, man. Though, how do you feel kind of coming off of this match, man? Because I do think it was an improved performance. Just kind of where's your head at?
Yeah, that's the messed up thing about it. I think every single one of my performances has gotten better and better, and yet I still lose. It sucks.
It does suck, man. You're not the first person it's happened to. There are multiple people that are down there without a win, just looking to be the person that can get that win next on the board and push their way out of that hole, kind of like Shannon was able to start doing tonight. I guess my question to you would be, Is there anybody who you want to play the next time you come back, or is it just you'll take anybody who hasn't won yet?
I'll take anyone who hasn't been in the blind rounds twice. Yeah, I'll take any one of those people. I mean, what else am I going to say?
I can give you somebody who's only been to the blind round once. Is that a step up for you, or?
I mean, 0 would be better.
0. All right. We'll take a look at the stat sheet and see what happens. But sir, it was a commendable performance tonight. Unfortunately, it could not be rewarded. Hopefully, it does so in the future for you. But welcome back from the retirement that never really existed because of the layover, anyways. And we will see you next time on the Battleground, sir, as I go ahead and take you out. And guys, that will be the match. Shannon Briggs, who again performed admirably both times before, he's the only person I can think of who definitively can say he really, really came that close 2 different times back to back and didn't get it. He does get that win. Unfortunately, it's at the expense of JD, who, again, I say this earnestly, is improving as a competitor in the Battleground. So I do hope to see him return and pick up that first win at some point in the future. But guys, that is going to be the match. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to say thank you to my judges, Andrea, Alejandro, and Henry. Thank you guys for being here and helping with the match. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below your thoughts, and stick around because we have more great Battleground matches coming up soon, including another title match coming in June. So check that out. Check out all the matches that have led up to that title match. And on behalf of all of my fellow producers here at Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time on the Movie Battleground. Take care, everybody.